everybody? So we're back again in a really red week. This is Crypto Kenny. I'm coming at you now with Web3 Weekly, and it's going to be an exciting one today. So, um, our last podcast last week, we'll put a link right up here, was with Rick Pacrano, traditional market investor. He was talking to us about the macro landscape currently and how that's affecting the crypto markets. We also talked a little bit about some real estate and just the traditional markets as a whole. So if you guys haven't watched that yet, please click on and watch that. Some of the stuff we even talked about last week, we're starting to see unfold here this week. Very red week. We've got some almost black swan events. You can't really call them that at this point because exploitations are just waving flags out there to be grabbed at this point. So we're going to talk about a few things today. We're going to talk about the overall market, what's going on in the NFT and the crypto space, and why all this red. We're going to talk about Celsius and the information that's floating around about Celsius currently. Not a lot of great news in that. We're going to talk about some market sentiment inside of communities with this most recent downturn. So with me today, I have once again Nate. He is our head alpha analyst at Alpha Mutants NFT. You'll see him in the Discord constantly dropping his analysis on projects, dropping news, dropping potential for free mints and all those type of things to still have a chance to make some cash and to stack some capital even in this market. So we have him here today. We also have Mr. Link available. He is our community and Discord manager. He's the guy that makes everything run on the back end over at Alpha Mutants and keeps us all in check and makes sure we get to meetings on time. So we're all going to be talking today. We'll get everybody's opinions on these different sectors of the market. But first off, thank you guys very much for taking time out of your day to come and talk about what's going on this week. I hope we can get some insight. Hopefully we can help some people out, encourage some people. And, it's one thing with these markets is that there is a potential for mental health problems, for people losing large amounts of money and getting really stressed out, and that's something we want to try to mitigate as much as we can. And that's one of the things we try to do over at Alpha Mutants is teach people to invest in such a way that it does not affect their in real life, being and family, and we don't want to ever have anyone in the place where they have a lot of stress or potentially, even worse than that due to market downturns. So today, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about market sentiment. So in the last few days, we have seen a very large downturn. I believe at one point when I was checking the other day, we saw Ethereum and Bitcoin at something like 15% down in a day within a 24-hour period. And that's massive. I don't believe we've seen something like that for probably 6 to 8 months. So very, very red days. So let's start off with that, guys. So let's start off with how this major downturn is affecting Discord communities, how it's affect what you're seeing on Twitter, what you're seeing chatter and everything going on with that. So Nate, if you want to start out, what's your overview of the just the public opinion in the markets right now?
Yeah, personally, just kind of scanning the market, I think everybody's kind of in the same boat. Everybody, I mean, you look around both in traditional and in Web3, and like the sentiment is like everybody realizes that the world's in a collapse right now. I mean, everything's getting hit, prices all over the place, not just in NFTs and crypto itself, but the real world. And so everybody, it's not a secret that where we're at and where we're headed, and everybody's bracing for it. I think what I'm seeing is that nobody knows where the bottom's going to be, obviously, which is kind of the crux of the situation. Right. But obviously the other stuff that we're going to get into on this podcast, it doesn't help the situation by any means. You've seen at least the past week, if for those of you that haven't seen, if you drop into the Alpha Nug server and go to our Insights channel, I mean, I did a write up on this, and I put out price targets, and all of them almost came to fruition less than 24 hours later. And we're talking 30%, 30% drops. We don't have a crystal ball by any means, but we can use context of what's going on in the world to kind of peg these things. And I think across the market, majority of the sentiment is just fear, obviously. And when you turn around and you look at things like Bitcoin dominance and where cash flow is coming in and out of. And right now, there's no new money entering the market. Most of it was going from blue chips and solid plays into degen plays and free mints. And now there's just not much flowing back any direction right now, which is the largest part of the problem right now, at least in Web3. Um, personally, like the only thing I'm looking at right now for the biggest clue is like Bitcoin dominance right now. Usually when you see these massive sell-offs, there's once you hit the bottom floor of the stabilization to where we start to move sideways, you start to see a lot of stuff flow from Bitcoin back into the alts in the market. And that's just not happening right now. Even back in 2017, Bitcoin dominance hit just under like 80% of the market. Now we're still sitting at 45% just because there's so many other chains and plays and stuff, but it hasn't moved at all, which leads me to believe that cash flow is just not moving around, which is it's going to be the pain point, I think.
For sure. So that was a great overview. I agree with a lot of that. So Link, for you personally, so you are in the discords a lot with the management of the teams. What do you feel like the overall sentiment is?
Oh my god.
With inside our team and with inside other teams. Like what do you see?
Um,
Uh,
yeah. So like I've seen just in the Alpha Mutants Discord, like I guess like most of the people who tend to know what they're doing, they're sort of, either held their capital back, ever since we had that huge downturn. I think like Bitcoin went down from like a hard resistance at like the 38K, 34K, 32K sort of level. And all the people that sort of knew what they're doing, they're like, oh, hang on, this isn't slowing down. Like nothing's stopping this. Like there's no good news coming in the market. There's no like new technology coming forward. There's no nothing. There's no new fresh money. And so with all the stuff happening, it's like in Ukraine and all that kind of stuff as well. I think around those 32K levels, everyone was sort of, well, people who knew what they were doing, they sort of were saying, all right, I'm going to go into stable coins now. I'm going to go into USDC. I'm just going to hold back, be a little bit bearish, because, we're sort of technically in a bear market then. I mean, technically we've been in a bear market since, probably like, I would say what, July, August of like last year.
yeah. Well, there's
Technically,
two.
but
Yeah, there's two lines of thought with that. It's like if it depends on
yeah,
what metric you're measuring, but I mean, at least from December last year, potentially from midway through the summer last
yeah,
year.
at
So it
least,
just
yeah.
nobody wanted to admit it, but here we are. So
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But so yeah, in the discords and across Twitter and all that kind of stuff, you definitely have noticed, the people who sort of know what they're talking about, and being a part of the Alpha Mutants Discord, you can see the majority, of the people in there know what they're doing, and they're listening to, Nate's insights and all of that kind of stuff. And it's sad though, because you do see a lot of people on Twitter, especially with the whole Luna fiasco. That was nuts. But you see a lot of people losing a lot of money, and people are getting scared, and they're not minting NFTs. They're not investing in any like crypto at all. They're just withdrawing, selling, getting rid of everything. And it's crazy because even I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a lot of free mints. Like a lot of projects have gone to free just so they can get some volume in. And even then, like some free mints aren't even selling out because people don't even want to pay the gas. Like
Well, now they're
it's
paying
nuts.
you to mint.
that method.
Yeah, I've
We
seen
pay
those.
we pay you to mint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. I think my only add to that would be that my problem is, and this is the biggest thing I see in the space, is there's such a disconnect between, like, you have these guys that know what they're doing, that they've been in the space, or they're part of a good alpha team, or they have this, so that they're most of those guys are excited about this, right? Because it's such a big opportunity
Mm.
at these
Mm-hmm.
levels. And then you have these
Yep.
retail people, or people that are just in the space, and they're just being exit liquidity for everybody else, and like they're just losing so much money, and there's not really a middle ground, right? And that's a problem, because there should be like your amateurs in the space that are doing stuff, and that just tells me that we're still early in this space, because there isn't a broad spectrum. You have your professionals, and then you got your just dabblers, and that's 99% of the space, right? So that's
Yeah.
that's what I see, and I think that's part of our why we need to educate as much as we can, because we want to bring more people into the realization that there's potential here, and fear is potential, and to lose that anxiety about the space, and to be able to invest properly. So, well, good insights, guys. Good insights. So that was just kind of warm us up for what's about to happen here. So let's talk about. I feel like it was only a few weeks ago, Nate, and you were making that video about the Luna fiasco. So once again, we have a problem with a very, very powerhouse protocol in the space. So Celsius is probably arguably one of the largest projects and well-known projects in the space as far as like DeFi is concerned. So, Celsius, for those of you that don't know, they offer crypto yields on, what is it now, like 40 different coins or so. They offer loans, asset-backed loans. They even offer exchange. I think recently, in the last 6-7 months, they've offered exchanges and swaps, that kind of thing. So they're a very popular, very simple system to use. And I don't think anybody really expected what is currently happening right now. So to give a very short overview, because it's overly complicated, and if you want a more in-depth overview, and I'm going to be dropping more as we go, I put it in our insights channel. I linked a couple threads and kind of did a quick explanation of what's going on. It's very complex, and I'm probably gonna have to do a couple more to like fully explain it. But basically what has happened is that during the bear market, that Celsius they offer some of the largest yields in the space for coins, right? And to do that, their plan was to utilize some very, very complex DeFi techniques. So what they had done was they had taken they had gone into MakerDAO and used leverage positions on BTC and ETH to make money that way, and that in itself is not a problem. The problem is that they eventually pulled out a 9-digit loan based off of assets on that. So it's a very large loan. I think it's actually the largest known active loan in the space currently. so that is all.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so nine digits. I mean, that's insane. So that they currently have a asset-backed loan for 9 digits. So when the market started to slip, obviously, they had a liquidation point at about 22,500 BTC. So obviously, they never thought that 23K resistance level was going to break. Well, it did, right? So in a rush, what they did was they paused any withdrawals, and they basically dumped everything else they had that was liquid into that loan to drop it to, now its liquidation level is at around 18.5K, right? They don't have much left to cover anything else. So the thing is, now if 18.5K is reached, that loan is liquidated and they become absolutely insolvent. There's nothing there, right? So once that information was leaked, there are big players in the space, market makers, funds that see this, and for them it's an opportunity, right? Because if they can push down the price to the liquidation points of such a large loan, then there's a flash buy opportunity where BTC, if BTC hit 18.5 and then Celsius was liquidated, I mean, man, we could see 14K or something like that, like within 24 hours. And then what that would make for those market makers was they could purchase at a 30-40% discount and almost guaranteed that they make that within a day or two. So that's what's going on right now. So they're being hunted because of this bad play of theirs. Now they could have covered this play with the ETH reserves they have, because this they have massive amounts of reserves. The problem is that with their ETH reserves, they took about 80% of that and they swapped it into ST ETH, which is staking ETH, right? So staking ETH cannot be liquidated easily because there's only like 100. I think they have like 120,000 pool that it's in, and they currently have 480,000. So they can't quickly liquidate because the pools aren't big enough, and you cannot trade staking ETH 1-for-1 even in the pools that they're traded for one for 0.98 currently. And what it is basically is that staking ETH. What happened was, the reason why they did this is because in holding the ST ETH, they could collect the staking rewards from the ETH while still keeping the ETH. And then once the Ethereum merger comes through, they will be given 1-for-1 ETH on the Ethereum's new system. But that only happens 6 to 8 months after the merger actually takes place. The merger hasn't even taken place yet. So they won't have that liquidity available for at least 12 months, at least. And that's if the merger stays on schedule. So they don't have that available to to liquidate. So the good news is that there's probably projects out there that would purchase at a discount even their STE, and they could probably get more liquidity in order to push down their liquidation of their loan. But another big problem is when they halted these when they halted the withdrawals and everything, and they added more liquidity to the loan, they could have just as easily paid down that loan, and it would have changed the liquidation price, but they didn't. So what that normally means is that the company does not have the funds available to pay off the loan. So they're just kicking the can down the road. So these are all bad signs for the longevity of this project. So that's the basic breakdown. So let's get the takes on it. So how do you feel about it, Nate? Any other information, or what's your take so far on Celsius?
And it's sad to see, because like I know a lot of people get burned with that stuff. I personally don't use Celsius, and this is why I think, being a part of the Alpha Mutants, for example, is beneficial, because it's just like traditional markets. I don't advocate for following every news channel with every source, but when these massive news things happen, like, it affects the entire market. So you might not be using it personally, but clearly the crash that we've seen this past week is a large factor based off this and what's happening. And, personally, like, I saw the news and I was digging through it, and I was looking at the terms and conditions, and it's anytime. So I'm going to preface this, but these companies that are doing most of these lending things, you need to look at, one, their balance sheets if you can, two, their terms and conditions, all those things, because most of these are not regulated like a bank, which means that, unlike Coinbase, for example, like, if anything happens to your ETH or whatever that you're sending over to these companies, it's not insured. So, you're sitting on essentially trust. And what's happening is essentially, like, if you look at their terms and conditions, I'm looking at it right now. Celsius terms and conditions: in the event that Celsius becomes bankrupt, enters liquidation, or is otherwise unable to repay its obligations, any eligible digital assets used in the earned service or as collateral under the borrower service may not be recoverable. Like, that right there tells you the risks associated with it. And when you put your money in anything, even that promises, anything over traditional APY yields, you open yourself up to that kind of risk. And because most of these big players are going to target those type of systems, which is the exact same thing that happens with the Luna system. So personally, it's sad to hear, but at the same time, like, you have to understand the risks that go into it. But it's troublesome, and the fact that a major company like this kind of made the decisions that they've made, like, even baffles me more.
Yeah, it's crazy, because it's almost like even a company that should have a team that is very seasoned in what they're doing, it's almost like they got caught up in FOMO, right? Like, they were chasing these because what they were doing is, it's complex DeFi stuff, right? Like, this is not amateur stuff. This is not like, oh, we're loaning people some money, and like we're talking cross chain items going on. We're talking leverage. These are very complex and dangerous things to be getting into, even for professionals. So it's like and I'm the first one to admit, even when I did that write up, I said, guys, this is an oversight on my part, because it was almost, when I was looking into these companies, there's a couple companies that I did not even dive deep into, because it's like, with their balance sheets so amazingly high, it's like you don't feel like there's any kind of like possibility for problems, right? So like BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager, like these companies at this level, and it just goes to show you that that was a terrible oversight on my part, because I had never looked at what they were doing with their balance sheets. You know what I mean? And it was a lesson to learn for me, because it's like, no matter how solid you think the company is, you still got to do your due diligence, and that's something even someone like me that's been in the space for years and years, like, still slip up,
I'm built a little different in that, like, if I sign a lease or do anything, I read top to bottom the contract. If it's 80 pages, I'll read all 80 pages. It's just the nature of it. But I think with these things, that the same rule applies. Like, not your keys, not your crypto. Same thing. If you're about to hand this over to a lending service, make sure you read through it all, because all this stuff is ironed out. And if you're going to go this route, like, even after all that, and you decide, hey, I want to do that, diversify, go into different platforms, Like, it's not to say that you're going to be risk free. We've had a few guys that, have just gotten hit hard with this and the Luna and stuff. It is what it is. And these are black swan things that you can't, majority of the time, these massive companies that are generating this type of revenue are generally pretty stable with it, but there's always that risk there, and you need to understand how they're managing your money, especially if they're not backed. So, it's a tough situation all around, but I think that for me personally, like I said, I'm not in Celsius, but like this affects everything I do. And luckily we kind of go back to how the sentiment is across all of, Discord servers and the market itself. You see two dynamics is those people, like for example myself, who we saw this coming weeks and weeks ago. I mean, we moved into stables. Like for me, this is like Christmas, right? I mean, all these prices, I can buy projects 50% discount that I would have less than 3 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it's like Christmas. I love it, but I understand that a lot of people don't see that stuff and don't move fast enough, and they got caught up in it. And now it's like, now you're faced with a hard decision. Do you sell? Do you go to stables now? It's tough.
Yeah, it is crazy. And like for us, I was gonna ask you too, Link. I saw your facial expressions while he was reading that the terms of contracts with Celsius.
Yeah, I was just getting flashbacks from when I first joined the space, and I was looking at very small, small cap DeFi projects. And, some of the returns on some of those things are just like, insane. They promise the world to you sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then you look at like bigger ones like BlockFi and Celsius, and then you're like, oh, they're only giving 10% on, this crypto or something like that. Something ridiculous still. And then you look at the smaller ones, and I remember, I was only probably 3 months in the space or something. And then I was joining some of these really small, like low cap DeFi projects. There was like Qubit Finance and like Pancake Swap, Pancake Bunny, like all these ones, and then fucking all of them got hacked. It was or they got hacked, flash loaned or whatever, and their prices went to zero. And I just saw, I think I had a couple of grand in them, and then I just saw it go straight to zero, and I was just like, holy shit, it's just a wake up call that this space, like no matter how big or small, these DeFi projects are, there's always an element of risk, and like Nate said, just diversify. It's like the best thing you can do.
Yeah, well, in those type of things, the crazy part is in those type of things, like like OHM and like these the clones of OHM and stuff, because that was real hot for a while. Like these massive APYs that were coming out to people, they're absolutely unsustainable. And everybody that got in knew that, right? I mean, if you didn't, then you were just totally uneducated. But everyone that got in knew that those things are basically just, you're getting into a pyramid scheme, and you're just betting that you're going to get in, make a little money, get out before it all comes crumbling down, right?
That's right.
So I mean, that's part of the wild west of the space, and luckily we're starting to get away from those type of things. I haven't seen like an OHM fork for a long time, so hopefully that's said and done with. But it's crazy though when you go from that. I completely understand like the psychology, but to go to something like Celsius that had been so solid, and they were paying really good APYs, but compared to the rest of the space, not crazy. It still is crazy in real life. I think that's a disconnect we have. It's like when you're getting 10% APY a year, I mean, that's insane. It is insane, and people don't understand how insane it is. Because it takes a very small amount of money just to throw into an account like that. And if it's guaranteed, I mean, you can, so many people could just retire right now. You know what I mean? If you're making 10% a year, I mean, shoot, 10% a year on $1 million, 100 grand a year, we can all retire, right? Throw $1 million in there, we're done, and it's over with. So you always have to look at the risk factors. There's always risk factors in that type of stuff. And it's, we're seeing that now. And this is, I think I posted it in the Discord the other day. This is the time that tries men's souls. And that's exactly how I feel about the space right now. This is going to prove, whether you really believe in this technology and whether you're going to stick around or not, or you're just going to be someone's exit liquidity, lose a bunch of money and get out and be, have a sour taste in your mouth for the next 10 years. So it's a very trying time right now. And also, by the way, guys, so go ahead. Link.
Oh, I was just going to say, there's definitely two types of mindsets in the space right now. You're either panicking, or you're really happy like Nate, and you're like, oh, I got a discount than I did a month ago.
Yeah,
still not buying
definitely
them,
only two.
Yeah, to be honest with you, because of the Celsius stuff, like I said, I think the Celsius issues accelerated these numbers, because I didn't expect to see these numbers for another month or two, and I don't think Nate did either. I think he did that that prediction expected, weeks down the road for us to hit those things, right? Because we're going to down our spot. But I think that's that the Celsius information that came out, I think that just completely fast tracked, just dumped like gasoline on the fire, and everything is just moved so much quicker, which is crazy. Me, when I saw this stuff, I was like 15% in a day on BTC and
Yeah.
it down, like, oh my god.
I'm not saying it's ever guaranteed, but I looked at it and I was like, there's like very little chance that we don't hit those numbers that I predicted. Right. And it's, but to see 15-20% across the board in less than 24 hours, that's rare, even in a bear market, for sure. So
it is 100%. So yeah. What I wanted to say real quick, we're coming about to the halfway point here, a little less than that, but I will have the links. I know we've referenced some channels and some information that's been dropped. So there will be links to the Alpha Mutants Twitter and the Alpha Mutants Discord in the description of this video. Please come join us. That Alpha Mutants Discord link is a forever link. So if you're watching this video, you can definitely get into the Discord. Currently, we have all of our tools and channels are open to the public. You don't have to have any of our NFTs. You can come and check out everything. When we get closer to mint day, and that will obviously the Discord will be closed down, and you'll have to get mint for one of our NFTs to be able to access this stuff. But definitely come check it out. See what we've got. Check out the insights. If you're active in the space, it can definitely save you a lot of money. Definitely make you a lot of money on different plays. So you guys can come check that out with us. So let's move on from the terrible news. Let's try to talk about something a little bit positive here. So we've seen a run through of a lot of different metas in the NFT space currently. I think we did every 48 hours we were getting some different meta play, and then we get 57 derivatives off of it within 2 or 3 days, and we move on. So yeah, give me a take. What are your feelings currently on the NFT space as a whole? What's going on? What's hot? What's not? Where's it going? Make some sense of it, Nate. Tell us what's going
on. NFTs in general, like I think the space, crypto itself as a whole, still super early, right? But you're seeing real world companies and protocols being adopted. NFTs, on the other hand, are still even 25% capacity of where they're probably going to go in this early stage, right? I mean, the only true companies probably actually like adopting and getting use case, Adidas, Nike, I would consider Bored Ape an actual company at this point, even though it's, not, just because they're diversified enough and they're adopted enough that they're backed by some tangible assets, right? I mean, same thing with, we've talked about, with the meta heroes and metaverse stuff, like Pixel Vault, they're diversified enough into real world assets, like truly branding and stadiums and stuff like that stuff isn't going to die. You turn around and you look at anything that you consider a blue chip that's just, I'm going to say a PFP. I know that there's more services back behind that stuff, but those things still have no tangible assets backing them. There's no real world adoption per se, other than outside of this space. So those things are still safe plays, in my opinion, like the house and, stuff like that, house passes stuff, all of that. But long term, like none of that stuff is immune to a market sell-off. I would say the Rect ecosystem, one of the most lucrative systems you can get into. Why? Because it's tied to a traditional market company. If the markets tank, that at least has some backing. I mean, I'm not saying it's immune, but by any means, but there's a safer aspect there to get into stuff like that. So when you talk about all these newer plays coming out on the market, most of these things that people own less than a year old, right? If you look at any real world company, it takes 3 to 5 years to even to get up to speed.
Well, how old are Bored Apes now? They're not even old, aren't
they? Yeah,
they?
exactly. No, they're still early, but but you look at any real world company takes 3 to 5 years to become profitable and developed, and even some of those don't last, even if they're profitable. Then it becomes very difficult. So when I'd laugh at some people that turn around and tell me, oh yeah, this is a blue chip, this is going to be a long-term play, when it came out 7 months ago. And it's like, it's hard to imagine. I think that there's a huge ecosystem here for the long term. Like, I think there's a lot of potential that can happen with this stuff, but I do think that we are still so early. Like it's so hard to tell. And at this point, like if I don't hold many things long term, but if you're not looking at most of these things as moonshots, then like shame on you. Like you're not going to make it, right? Because that's just the reality of it is most of these things, the liquidity might be great now, but in 4 months from now, especially in a bear market, the liquidity dries up and you can't get out of it.
Cannot sell. I know me personally, like I've been in a situation where you get into products and they can have massive liquidity at one point, and then once the liquidity dries up, it's the same problem Celsius is having right now. They don't have enough liquidity to even get out of their position, and that's what people understand about the crypto and the NFT space, and even a higher level, is that it's so small still that there is not massive amounts of liquidity. This isn't like the traditional markets where we've got trillions of dollars that are in these liquidity pools that we can swap at will, right? That's not how it is here in crypto. So you have to even I even know plenty of stories of guys making millions and millions of dollars off of ICOs on coins, off of things like that, and never being able to cash out more than 5 or 10% because the liquidity just isn't there, and then the project dies and they're left with nothing, right? So you have to. It's not only finding plays that are hyped, but it's finding plays that are going to have longevity enough for you to even get out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a lot with that. What about you, Link? What do you think? What's your thoughts on the current NFT market as we stand right now? This is, and by the way, this is Link's official first real bear market. So we actually have him on here as like a voice of me and Nate get like nostalgic sometimes and talk about these past markets, but obviously no bear market is the same. So we want kind of a fresh view on what his takes are on everything.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with what you said, Nate. NFT space is just way too early to speculate on what's probably going to be around in another 5 years' time. And like you said, Kenny, is there going to be liquidity to sell out in 5 years' time? Like, is that demand still going to be there, or is it just going to completely die off essentially, like some of these old crypto, currencies that are essentially dead right now?
Yep.
And yeah, as far as being like my first bear market, it's a learning process. I do wish I had more liquidity than I currently have, but what can you do?
Everybody does.
Everybody, we all
Everyone
do, man.
does. That's right.
Trust me.
I feel like I probably have in the upper tiers of liquidity, and I still am sitting here the other day thinking about, could I mortgage my house to like get some more liquidity? You know what I mean? Like it's everybody wishes they had more. It doesn't.
I know
matter.
people that do, and like that's the hard part is you Celsius right now, going back to that, this is the case in point. People that already have the liquidity turn around and try and acquire more liquidity. When you can say, hey, I can still retain ownership of my assets, and I quote unquote retain, right? You're still technically giving up ownership of it temporarily. But if you're promised, hey, you can own your assets, lend them out, get an astronomical amount of APY, and essentially still increase your liquidity size at the same time, right? That's where you get the trouble. And that's what's happening is, don't get me wrong. I've debated doing that stuff before. I've got X amount of Bitcoin. I can lock that up, generate interest on that, buy more Bitcoin, right? And it's just this never ending cycle. So everybody, does that. And I think you look across the market, and right now, like, I think that NFTs themselves, there's still a massive potential down the line. But when you look at it, and Kenny, you and I were talking about this before Link got on and before we started recording, but most of the time, like, look at real world businesses, right? What's the differentiated subscription model from some of these projects that are coming out with an NFT, right? It's a business model regardless, and they look at it from that standpoint. But if you can do something with a subscription model on an ecosystem that's already built, I mean, you look and you've got the WAPs marketplaces and stuff where you can go online, connect your account, buy a subscription base there, get access to all the same stuff that these NFTs are giving you. It's just a different way of looking at it, right? Yep. So one is deflationary, right? You've only got a limited number of supplies. Sometimes those suppliers staked or burned. And the other one is you essentially have infinite amount of subscriptions generally, but it's significantly easier of an onboarding process, and you can cancel at any time. So when people turn around and tell me these meta assets, like, oh, you're going to pay, $700 for a weapon skin for a game, right? That's great. You own that asset, right? But if you look at it from, you need to look at it from a real world point of view. And I think this is kind of where the new person who's going through a bear market compares to somebody who's a little bit more experienced. I turn around and look at these things from a realistic standpoint. If I'm going to pay $700 for weapon skin, great. I own it. It's mine. I can turn around and resell it. There's no, Microsoft to Blizzard, nobody can tell you, hey, we're not going to allow you to resell that, right? Which is great. But majority of these things, when you look at, most people don't play games more than a year, right? I mean, I've got Halo games back in the day where I purchased assets in the games, and I don't even own the consoles anymore. Like I can't even, they shut down some of the servers, right? So it's like, what's the use case for that stuff, right? Long term. And I think that's kind of the caveat to the system. So when you look at these gala games and stuff, they've got a massive, massive ecosystem, but are those games going to be around for the next 5-10 years, right?
Yep.
And are those assets going to be lucrative?
Yep, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's questions like that you have to ask yourself to not fall into the trap of FOMO. Like even myself, when I find a project that has a fantastic business plan and backers and models, sometimes I even find myself like not looking at the details like that, right?
Yeah.
So you have to, and it's something that you learn over time in the space, and it's very important. It'll save you a lot of money in the long run. So I absolutely agree, 100%.
Well, I love that you asked some of the hard questions on some of these AMAs, because I even forget to do it, right? You get caught up on, hey, this is what the project's going to sell right now. Here's the FOMO in it. Here's, the cool tangible assets that you're going to get. But the hard question is what's your business model for the next 5 years, let alone 2 years, right? And most people, if they can't answer that, and that's why like an ecosystem that you and Rick were talking about in the last podcast, and if anybody hasn't seen it, I highly recommend you go back and check it out, because it's the most down to earth, thing that you can probably take away from this bear market with a lot of information. But I mean, when you talked about the Gala ecosystem, that case in point right there, that there's a difference between a project and a business. And they are a business, right? I mean, they have their hands in so many different cookies and ecosystems, cookie jars and ecosystems, right? That they are going to be long-term. Even if one or two of the games dies, they have a business model. There is a use case for that token, and there probably will be for the next 5-10 years. Those are the things, those are the plays you want, not projects. Projects may not make it out of a year or two, even if they're profitable, even if they got hype and user base and all that, right? It's very, 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 very rare that something turns into a Bored Ape, right? And I just highly, highly recommend people look at it from that point of view, because it'll save you a lot of money and a lot of trouble.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've always done is like I try to compare it to real world things so that new people can understand. And it's like this. It's like, so yeah, there are products in the real world that come out as a single product, right? So like so fidget spinners. Okay, you guys remember fidget spinners, right? That was one. That was one.
That Link owns some of those.
One project, right? And
you seem like a fidget spinner guy.
It made massive amounts of money for about 6 to 8 months, right? And then now, do you see those anymore? Absolutely not. It was a one-trick pony. Did great. So that is what I compare to these single projects that have one trick and they do that well. Now that's not to say that some of those things don't last forever. I mean, we got what we call Scrub Buddies. Those things came back out in the 90s and they're still around, right? And that's the only product that they have. That's it.
Like ShamWows.
Yeah, exactly. So there are certain things, and those are your Bored Apes. Those are your those projects that just that they break the mold. But as a rule, to invest in fidget spinners versus to invest in, say, Sony, right? That has thousands of products, right? There's a big difference there. Your ratio of risk to reward is so much better, right? Someone that invested in fidget spinners, day one, day two, they probably made a lot of money if they got out in time, right? But in the long run, somebody that's been buying in at Sony, DCAing into Sony over the last 20 years has made much more. And that's how I try to compare the ecosystems inside of NFTs, inside of crypto, versus these singular projects, right? So that's how I try to do the real world example of people that come in. But and I think that's how we got to look at it, because it's not, regardless of what we think, businesses and products are businesses and products. It doesn't matter if they're digital or if they're physical, whatever they are. They can be emotional or like whatever. It doesn't matter. They're still businesses and products. They still follow the same laws no matter what realm that they exist on. So we have to remember that and not think that this is some magical new realm where all the rules of investing just disappear, because they
Yeah.
don't. There are outliers. There's always outliers. You always have your crazy, little metas that pop up and down, but those things never ever last, and they don't ever become the rules, right? They are outliers. So I think that that's something that's a very important message to get out into the space,
The
because I
thing
think
I always, sorry, the thing I always tell people, like especially newer people, because it's hard when we get on these AMAs, right? And there's so many alpha groups now, right? And there's so many. I mean, you look at across the market, there's not going to be one singular play in any sector, right? And whether it's our alpha group or the next alpha group, like I advise people to go and look at the experience level in those groups. Not the, I mean, there's a lot of copy trade material. There's a lot of news being circled or like circulated around of the exact same thing. But look at the quality of the people in that group and stand back and observe before you do any trades or any calls, and look at it, because there's a lot. I'm probably in 10 different groups myself, and 5 of those groups are excellent, right? I even get some information from those. But you want to surround yourself with people that have been through this stuff, that know what they're looking for. And I think when it boils down to it, right, is looking at these things from a real world perspective is super important. And this market is great for many different people. You've got the hodlers, you've got the people that are long-term traders that just hold and watch it go up. And then you've got the people who are flippers or active traders who look literally just snipe or whatever. I mean, there's a market sector for everybody. Me personally, I don't hold many things long-term because I just look at it from a realistic point of view. I would rather turn and trade 20 successful trades in a row and grow my capital that way than hold something to the moon hoping that it's a Bored Ape. Those people that did, it's probably few and far between, but fucking props to them, because that takes some diamond handing right there. But that's not for everybody. I've tried the other side. When I first started, in the bear, I went through my first bear market. I did like everybody else. I turned around and held something too long, watched it go, I watched something go from a few $1,000s to like 30 or 40 grand. I didn't sell, and then it came back down. Now it's worth like 50 bucks and there's no liquidity.
Old
Yeah.
jet coin.
Yeah. And
Old
and I
jet coin.
and I think it's one of those things that you have to, you can take wisdom just like you can from your grandparents in the real world, but until you go through it yourself, you're not going to understand, right? And it's a lesson learned. And I think that right now, the bear market, surrounding yourself with those people, and I wrote this up in my insight, the best thing you can do right now, don't chase the degen plays, don't chase the free mints, like literally learn from the people and do what they're doing. I'm not saying buy into every single play that they're getting into, but look at what they're doing with their capital. And you and Kenny, you and Rick talked about this, and it's some of the most fundamental, sound, simple advice, but it's the hardest thing to do. Especially in a market like this. Like I'm telling everybody in our group, like the hardest part is just sitting and being patient. Like I look around the market, it's like, wow, shit, I can buy this at 30% discount, right? Great. But I'm still not buying because I know there's further downside. And that's the hardest part, is just sitting there, just like it burns a hole in your pocket,
Yep.
Yeah.
Link, I wanted to ask you something regarding this. So since since your entry into the crypto space, has your trading like thesis changed, or has your investing thesis changed from what you started at to what you currently are planning, or what you currently have that you're doing as far as investing? I just want to know, like what did you come into the space thinking you were going to do as an investment, and then how has that changed over your time in the space?
Yeah, well, I came in during a bull market, so
Right.
sort of most people get drawn in at that point when they see, oh,
Yeah.
Bitcoin's gone up like 2x, like holy shit, it's actually like worth investing. Like people are making heaps of money, and
Hmm.
in a bull market, you can just throw a dart at a board and you can make money at anything in the top 100 even,
Yep.
it
Yep.
was nuts. So that initially drew me in, and then with NFTs and all that kind of stuff, it was sort of a rabbit hole. And even in a bull market, I've got to say, investing in some of these like newer projects and grabbing some of these like newer NFTs, like with no utility, mind you,
Yeah.
they would they would even like, they would go up with the hype, and then even they would die off in a bull market, which is crazy. And you get a lot of people that are like diamond hands, just go into the just hold it and you'll make heaps of money. And I mean, I think in my first two projects, I listened to that advice because I thought in my head at the time,
Mhm.
I thought, oh, like just hold Bitcoin because, everyone's made money that's just held it essentially.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, diamond hand, that makes sense. Just hold it, and it'll make
Yeah.
money, and I'll check it in like a few years' time. But
Mhm.
totally not the case with the NFTs, not at all. So I lost out on my first two, I think it was Solana projects.
Mhm.
They weren't too expensive at the time, but yeah, I took a loss on that and quickly learned do not diamond hand.
Well, it's
Yeah.
funny that you
Very
say that.
few things you can hold.
Well, it's funny
Yeah.
that you say that. I think because the same thing happened with traditional coins, when crypto first started, right? There are going to be NFT plays that you can diamond hand, and that will make it long term, right? And you're seeing that with Bored Apes, with the punks and stuff like that. But I think it's interesting you say that because like back when crypto first started, right, there were only like maybe 7 top coins, right? And because there were only maybe 10 on the market.
Yeah.
And maybe Jetcoin was one of them, right?
Yeah.
And
So
I
yeah.
think, but I think from an overall standpoint, there were only like 7 of them then. So it's like if you held them, right, they still went through all their bears. I mean, they had 90% retracements, but those ones you could diamond hand over 4 years, right? But now you look around and how many coins are on the market, how many NFT plays are coming out daily. Literally, I mean, you it was hard enough to do finding a needle in a haystack then. Now you're finding a needle in an entire junkyard, right? And it's really tough to do. So diamond handing is still going to be there. You just have to find the right ecosystems in place to do it. And I think right now, in my opinion, like it's very, very, very hard to peg that. I look at probably 100 plays a week, and I don't even know what's going to make it anymore.
Yeah.
So
mean,
I think it's a different mentality, and it's interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, my
Mm.
input on that particular, I actually I hate the phrase diamond handing because it's like it makes sense with Bitcoin, right? But it doesn't quite make sense with these projects that have been in existence for 6 months, right? Because we don't have any history. Like with Bitcoin, at least in 2017, we could say, hey, as the metrics and the statistics tell us that we can hold this project, and eventually over time it's always going up or whatever. And I don't know, I don't like the term because I think that as the space grows it's going to be less and less of a actual truth, and there's going to be very few things that you can hold long term and actually make money on. So yeah, I think as the space develops that's going to be something. But all right, guys. So we're coming up to where we got about 15 minutes left. So I wanted to get to these last couple of questions that I had on here. So we've talked about the markets. We talked about where stuff stands. Nate's mentioned and me myself that we're still looking at some potential downside here. But let's say that we get to that level where we're feeling comfortable with getting back into the DCA and getting back into the to filling the bags up again. So here's the question that people want to know. We're go around. So first off, what are the 5 crypto projects that you look to build your bags on during this bull market? Go.
I'm gonna
Start.
let Link take this one first. I'm curious to see his
There we
answer.
go. Let's hear it. Like let's hear you do it.
I want to hear
first.
it from a newer point of view first, and
Oh
we'll see.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, layer ones and layer twos, essentially. That's probably it in a nutshell. So you'd have, Chainlink, even Phantom, maybe I would load up a bit on. Solana, AVAX, Ethereum, maybe a bit of Bitcoin. But yeah, it's sort of like a preference point at that point, right?
Yeah. So you're okay? Let's do coins and NFTs. I'm curious to hear both, but it sounds like you're probably more so chains.
Yeah, NFTs, I'm not sure on. I'm really not sure on
Yeah,
what to hold long term on NFTs. I think
probably
Kenny
the
would
right
have a better
answer.
idea of that.
That's
Yeah.
probably the right answer.
And like you said, Kenny, I got a question for you. When you said, NFTs, they
Mhm.
haven't been around for long. It's hard to find a blue chip NFT to diamond hand essentially.
Yeah.
How long would you want to see history before you would hold something? Because like
Uh,
CryptoPunks are in existence, have been in existence for since 2017, so
right,
that's a
right.
while. But
Yeah, it is. But see, so this is where we get into different levels of investing, right? So in crypto in general, it's different because we have history, right? And these are projects that build in real world utility that actually, they encompass financial markets. We've got crypto projects that are going into like medical fields, energy efficiency, all these things. So that they tackle real world problems, right? So they're like real businesses in that sense, is that they see a problem and they give a potential solution to the problem. NFTs are a bit different because NFTs came into the space just to be entertainment, right? They're just fun. The CryptoPunks were not ever minted to chain to be like, oh, this is going to take this, we're going to do some sort of great thing or fix some problem with this. It was just fun, right? So there's a difference in those things. And I think that it depends on how they develop because if you look over historically and even in the development of societies, we always see things that fix problems or that create products long before we see entertainment stuff, right? That actually grows. So I think it's the same thing. So I think that all NFT investing is speculative. Absolutely everything. I think all of it is. I even think that the projects I consider blue chips are immensely speculative. So I will compare it to investing in the, within the first year or two of the dot coms and the tech boom and bust like that, you're at about the same risk level because we don't know, man. Like we have no idea what's going to make it in these things. So that's just my opinion. So what my advice to people is, if you have a very limited amount of capital to put into this space, don't even touch NFTs. Like, don't do it. There's no point. Stay with your crypto investments. You might want to look into investing into some nodes or something like that. Maybe try your hand at some mining, things like that. But stay in the realm of the actual companies that are fixing problems, right? NFT money is that percentage of your portfolio that you feel comfortable completely losing, because you're literally chasing moonshots in NFTs. That's what you're doing. You're trying to find that the next Disney, the next Google, these things, and your chances of that are 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000, 1 in 10,000, and it's going to get worse and worse as we go on with more projects. So there are ways that you can mitigate that. Like you can look into what different metrics that make it look like there's potential there, but you can never be sure. So my advice is, and specifically if you're brand new and you don't have any help or anyone like explaining to you why you should invest in these things, like a good alpha group or a good community together, you should not be in NFTs. That's just my opinion. Like that's just
yeah,
that.
100%.
I know some people probably wouldn't like that answer, but but that's fine. So
It's funny. So
And,
I'll touch on.
so what coins? I was going to say, yeah.
Oh
So
yeah, go
to
for it.
continue
yeah,
that answer to the other question,
yeah, go ahead.
what coins would you guys be investing into or DCAing into? If we get below a certain point.
Um,
Go.
yeah,
You want to go
can I,
first?
I'm making my list. I'm going down the list right now because I did this the other day for
Okay.
everybody. I'm going to do it now.
All right, so I'll do mine then. So my top five, and obviously my portfolio is probably going to contain more like 10 or so. I'm not a big fan of huge portfolios. I don't think anybody. I think five's a good number. It diversifies enough. But obviously, I've never stopped DCAing into Bitcoin and Ethereum and into Chainlink. Those are my three. Bitcoin obviously because it's the foundation of the space. Ethereum because despite its flaws and problems, it has the largest market share and the largest amount of developers in the space, and more is built on it than anything else. So obviously into Ethereum, those are my two long-term plays. And then Chainlink simply because it's like selling it's like people that invested in selling the picks and shovels during the gold rush actually made more money than the average gold rush miner, right? And that's my same thesis with Link, is that it's integrated so deeply in almost every project. I mean, it goes all the way from like exchanges, dexes, aggregators, anything that needs any type of information, games, all that stuff. They need Link, and they use Link. So I think long term, it's a great play. So as for a couple others that I'm really looking at, I like a lot of the top 20, 30 coins, but what I'm betting on personally myself is I think Solana looks really good. I think that Solana has a great future in the space as far as potential with NFTs, with gaming, with a lot of stuff. I think it's very early. So I think by next bull run, as development continues, that Solana is going to be a lot smoother, and it's going to give Ethereum a lot better run for its money because of development and so forth. So Solana is a big one for me. I'm looking at entry in Solana at about 25. We're currently sitting at a little over $30. At that point, I'll probably start DCAing into Solana. And then for my fifth, I'm more than likely, and this is almost like my moonshot here as far as my top five is the one that I think has the largest potential, but it also has the largest amount of risk.
Can I take a guess?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gala.
No, actually, no. In my top five, it would not be.
Not.
It would not be my top five. So Avalanche would be my number five because I think all of my top five are either Bitcoin or like complete ecosystems. So anything that isn't a complete ecosystem, I consider more risky. So Avalanche is my next one. I think that Avalanche, once development is there, once more utility comes on that chain, I think that it's going to be a massive powerhouse of a chain. So next cycle, I believe we see Avalanche do ridiculous things. I mean, I could see a 50 to 100x out of Avalanche next cycle. So, and then just some notable mentions. I will. I think Gadla, of course, is something that I'm going into. It's my play for the. I believe that they are going to be the premier development gaming company in the space. So I'm betting on them. I like Hugo Labs, and I think that Bored Ape will continue to develop. So I'll probably pick up some Ape Coin, and then probably looking into something like the Sandbox. A few different things. That VeChain is also one that's, I believe, in like the top 40 right now that I really like because it's a real world. There's some things I don't like about it, but I'll probably be in that a little bit too. So all of those beyond the top five will be 90% of my portfolio. And then the additional 5 or so that I pick up will be, a couple percent a piece of my portfolio. But those are my coins. So
that's good. So I'm going to open this because I think it was a really good point. So we had a guy in Alpha, it's really, really good guy, helps us a lot, but I want to explain the difference for those newer people. So you have ecosystem and you have infrastructure, and they're very, very important to understand the two. Mm-hmm. Like somebody that's been around or just now entered the space, like Bored Ape Yacht Club is an ecosystem, right? If there's multiple things under their branding umbrella, but if their main collection goes down, right, it'll take a hit to the ecosystem, but it doesn't completely tank it.
Right.
Infrastructure, very, very, very different, very much more a must and lucrative, right? Ethereum is an infrastructure. If it goes down, every other project on it crashes. Ethereum is a must, right? So those plays that I'm looking at long-term are the infrastructures, the must-haves, because you can't get by without them, right? I mean, you could go to another chain, right? But right now, right, and it's part of our discussion point between like Bitcoin, Ethereum is the top tier plays, right? Because if Ethereum somehow, let's say they do their new transition into the new Ethereum 2.0 and all that, right? And let's say it doesn't go as planned, right? And they have a lot of networking issues. People are going to look to move to other chains. Well, right now, those other chains are still young. They still have their problems. There's nothing super stable enough to operate the type of traffic and the security aspect of it that Ethereum does, which is why people still pay the gas fees that they do on Ethereum, and which why projects for the most part are still always minted on Ethereum. You're starting to see it in the Solanas, in the Polygon, stuff like that. But the problem is those chains still have hiccups. So right now, 2 top tier plays, and like I think this is probably in anybody's book, Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? Obvious. I'm not looking so much into ecosystem plays as I am infrastructure. So my top 5 plays: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, Polygon. Those are the only chains that if a project was being developed, I could honestly see those being stable enough to run them. Yep. My more moonshot infrastructure plays: BNB, let's see, Phantom. Those are probably the only other, and Polkadot, maybe. Those are the only other chains, maybe Cardano, that could have stuff being built on them, but they're still very early. Those I could see becoming legitimate chains down the line. As far as like definitely like moonshot plays, ApeCoin, I think it's cheap enough now. There's still like that ecosystem behind it. I think that could be a decent play, but I wouldn't put very much of my capital in it.
Yep.
If you're looking to get into some mining, like legitimate mining plays and ecosystems, Helium is not a bad one. They're at-home miners, fantastic if you haven't looked at them. You know, I like. I'm going to say this with a caveat. I like Axie and Sandbox, but I think that my personal opinion is they're very overcompensated for. I think the ecosystems are great, but as you see more of these other NFT worlds and stuff plays come online, I think that those are going to slowly kind of fall a little bit to the wayside. They're not going to be the powerhouses right now. They are because they're the furthest along developed and adopted. So personally, like seriously, like if I was my number one buy at this point, other than Ethereum, probably Solana. I think when you see, ask yourself the easiest question to ask yourself is when you're going to put money, what would you personally use? If I don't technically use an NFT or plan on holding it and using it, I don't have the interest. I don't hold it. I get rid of it. Same thing goes with the chains. If I'm not using projects built on those chains, I'm not to say that they're not investments, but those are not the ones that I see happening long term. Right now, I've used stuff on Phantom, I've used stuff on Solana, Polkadot, all that stuff, but you clearly see where most of the traffic is going. And I think that when you look at your long-term stuff, like put a little bit into those moonshot plays like ApeCoin, right? It's still there's a brand there, and the coin's not going to die. Whereas like if I go down the list of even in the top 50, some of these plays, right? I look at them and I'm like, what the fuck is this? So like like Hedera Hashgraph, right? Kenny, you're probably familiar with that. When they first came out, their valuation was like through the roof, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're still, at least maybe I need to go back and look at it, but they're still not a stable enough platform to operate. Like it's more of an idea at this point than a stable product.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would recommend anybody that's new to the space, go through the top 50 coins, seriously do some research on every single one of them and find the ones that you like. All of these things, majority of these things will probably still around. I mean, VE Chain, Cosmos, those things came back out in like 2018. Like, and so the bottom question that I wanted to touch on this, Kenny, when you asked, what NFT plays are, or I think Link asked it, what NFT plays could you see being long-term holds, right? If it makes it through this bear market and is still adopted, that is your long-term play. Because it's 90% of those coins won't make it, or plays won't make it.
Yeah, for sure. So let's do this because we got like 5 minutes. Let's do really quick. Let's start with Link because it's fun. I think we get him going first because he's like, oh, so Link. So if you were theoretically, you had the capital where you were not afraid to lose 10% of your portfolio or whatever. In this down market, we're hitting bottom, things are bottoming out. What NFT plays do you like currently? I mean, you've been in the space a short amount of time. What have you seen that you personally like? You like their communities, you like some of the products they have out, you like some of it. Just anything. It doesn't even have to be 5 if you don't have 5 on your head, but like, a couple of them that you might try your luck on based off of some of the information that you've seen over the last, 6 months, a year that you've been in the space.
I'm liking CloneX, Mutant Apes. What's that? So 5, do you say? All right. So Mutant Apes, maybe clones. I mean, if I had stupid capital, probably a CryptoPunk, to be honest, because of the historical value behind that. Like, yeah, history, definitely. Just having a look through the top ones now. Probably some RTF KT and maybe a Pixel Vault. To be honest, I don't know your opinion on Cool Cats now. But if you asked me 3 months ago, I would have said Cool Cats.
Yeah. I mean,
but now they don't seem to be holding up too well.
Yeah, no, I mean, none of that's terrible. At least you didn't say like something I've never even heard of or something like that. So it's yeah, and I mean like and those are the things. And what are the reasons why you like select those things? I could almost say it's because you've heard like a lot of other people talk about them, right? You've heard a lot of announcements about them, and they're in the media and they're in the markets, and they're doing the right things, right? That's why we know about them and who and what they are. So that's a big thing with NFTs is just having visibility and having some kind of use case or utility or community or whatever. All right, so this is the juicy part. All right, come on, Nate. Let's hear this. I want to hear this because Nate doesn't hold anything. So this is
Tokyo.
I
exciting.
don't hold anything really.
Yeah.
Man.
I
just don't. I don't see the vision. I would rather take 21s
and S2s.
No.
That's what he's loading
I'll
up
tell you.
on, baby.
I'll tell you what. Their community. I still like the community and the fact that they're doing kind of what Alpha Mutants did, where their community, like the project itself, was tanking, and their community stepped up and said, "Hey, we're going to overhaul this." Like I'm all on board with that. Like that is a huge aspect because those are the type of projects that there's enough backing that people don't want it to die, which in my opinion, that's a good play.
Yeah.
I think that they're extremely overpriced right now. So like, it's not to say I'm hating on Neo Tokyo, but they're extremely overpriced in my opinion. Until they get that ship turned around, I'm still not looking to re-enter until it's a better price. But from my overall point of view, like anything I'm going to hold long-term, I'm looking at utility plays right now. And anybody that knows me in our group knows I love, good trading tools. I love utility stuff that if I'm going to use it and it saves me time and money, best money you could spend, especially in the long term. Like I think NFTs are still really early. This ecosystem is going to be here, 2 years from now. I want to buy solid trading tools now because it's going to make me money down the line. So I personally hold a bunch of Alpha Sharks. They're currently staked. I'm going to keep holding those. I think that what their trading tool, their response time is great on, anytime issues come up, their UI is fantastic. Trait Sniper is a good one. If you're looking to get other utility plays right now, that's a good one. For newer people, Flippers fucking discounted heavily. You can get out for like $50 and it has almost every tool you could ask for. Their UI needs a little bit of work, but all of their stuff works. And if anybody has questions on anything, definitely ping me because I probably touched it, seen it, used it 100%. And I can tell you, hey, this is not what you're looking for before you spend the money on it. Long-term plays, the only things right now that I would be willing to hold, Pixel Vault, and Kenny did a fantastic one-page write-up on it. Like I would highly recommend somebody join Alpha Mutants, look at the deep dive stuff because there's a fantastic write-up on it. That stuff I didn't even know. And they're so diversified, it's not even funny. Like that is a fantastic ecosystem. And long-term plays, you want teams that are currently developing and have a long-term future. So when we talk about that 2 to 5 year outlook, find those teams that are constantly developing, constantly coming out with other collections and other aspects that they can add under their umbrella. So Pixel Vault. If capital wasn't an issue, Board Ape Yacht Club, what they're doing is fantastic. I really like CyberKongs. I'm actually been kind of eyeballing one to pick up. I think their community is probably one of the strongest I've seen. Anything under the Nike umbrella, buy, literally pick up every single one you can do. Anything under the house ecosystem, I like that too. I think that they're developing. Psychedelics Anonymous is probably one that I don't personally buy into, but I know that they have a very strong community with a lot of different collections, a lot of different aspects. I would recommend that's probably a good one, but it's not for me. Yep. And the only other one I've kind of been looking at too, Llamaverse stuff. I think what Llamaverse is doing and Llama himself, anything they touch has pretty much turned to gold. I mean, and when I talk about alpha groups and knowing, following people that know what they're doing, watch their calls and some of their baseline on why they get into place, because probably one of the best out there. So for me, those are probably the top ones I'm looking at. It's not to say that there's not other things out there, but like I said, the sandboxes, those type of things, I think there's value there to be had, but it's not for me personally. I'm looking to get a discounted pre-mint, but I think it's overinflated heavily. But those are the type of utilities, if you can use it in this ecosystem, you can get advantage of it. That's my number one utility place, hands down.
All right. Well, there we go, people. So mine is I'll do mine really quick and then we'll have to sign off here. But so, me personally, I'm not going to be as anywhere near as exposed, but I do have some plays. So, my number one is I'm going to go down the list of I only think currently there's only probably three I would call blue chip plays in the NFT space. So that my top three would be those three. So would obviously be the Hugo Labs and Bored Apes ecosystem. Specifically, if you want a specific collection, I think the best risk to reward currently is the land. You can currently pick those up at around 2 ETH right now, which is really funny. When those came out, I put a prediction. I said their valuation should be 2.5 ETH or ETH or lower because that's what they're actually worth based off of a lot of the metrics. And lo and behold, that's where they went to. So I'm comfortable picking those up. I think that it's a easy bet that Hugo Labs is going to continue to develop the Bored Ape ecosystem, and I think that with our few announcements that said that everything in our ecosystem is going to be built off of material that comes from these lands, I like that. I think that there's going to be a lot of potential to make money off of these land plays. So I'm looking into getting some rares in the land during the down period. I'm looking to snipe some of those out. People just need liquidity. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, anything in the ecosystem, absolutely great. But specifically the land, I think is going to be great. So Rect Capital, in with those plays, CloneX I think is the first one you should look at. I'm going to be looking at trying to pick up some more rare, like a demon or a reptile type CloneX, get some of the rare ones in there. I also think anything in that ecosystem is gold. So I'll probably load up quite a bit on that. Thirdly, Pixel Vault. Pixel Vault's a little bit different because, like, unlike Bored Apes and CloneX, who have one whole ecosystem, Pixel Vault technically has two ecosystems, and they're actually branching off into a third one currently. So for that, Pixel Vault, I think the Founders DAO is a no-brainer because the value of the Founder DAO itself is worth like 80% of what the buy-in price of the DAO is currently. So just off of assets, it's almost worth it. And then plus you get all these utilities, like you get first whitelist on like almost everything they drop. You get a super good analytics team and like all this stuff. So I think that that's a no-brainer. I think that in the Meta Heroes universe, I really think a lot of that probably a generative identity because they're still as people continue to burn their mint passes to generative identities, there becomes less and less of the cores that come out. So I think a mint pass is a good idea because you could potentially get a core identity, which is a 90 ETH floor, I believe right now, 95 ETH floor. And I also really think the planetary DAOs are good buys right now. You get them for next to nothing, and they're literally going to be shares of the revenue once the game comes out. And I believe the game's actually scheduled for beta. They actually moved up the beta test, which is something you'd never see in crypto gaming, to like the fourth quarter of this year. So it's going to be beta testable at the fourth quarter. And once that game goes live, people that own those DAOs are going to have commercial rights and yield rights to everything that happens in that game. So I think that's a good one. I also think Punk's comic. I think Punk's comic issue 1 is going to be historic. I think because it's historic, but it's also with the development of the ecosystem that they've really held the utility of those. So I think those are going to be great. So those are my top 3 as far as the blue chips. So to round off the 5, it's probably going to surprise you guys. So I've tried to diversify and get into the space in different areas to kind of just diversify as much as I can. So I'm actually looking at art blocks, not the collections as a whole. I'm looking specifically at Fidenzas and at the Squiggles, right? So Squiggles, basically because they were the first collection ever launched. I think they have a super historical value that's just, it kind of writes itself. The Fidenzas, because obviously they're the most popular and the very rare. There's only 999 Fidenzas that'll ever be in existence. So I'm looking to get into the art blocks ecosystem with those 2 plays. And then finally, I'm going to go basically off of OpenSea and say that I'm going to be heavily diving into Gatla, specifically the Gatla music NFTs and some of the larger games land NFTs in those games. So that would round off my 5. And that's what I'm planning on.
Yeah, all of those plays sound really solid. And they'll make it out of the bear market, I'm sure. One thing I did notice with all of our picks is that we all picked ETH NFTs. We didn't pick, a
That's
Solana or Cardano
Yeah.
or anything.
Well,
I think
it's
the
not.
No
ecosystem is just
DeGods, no Thugbirds, no nothing.
Yeah, it's I think that the reason for that for me is I think that we see the biggest boom in Solana NFTs. I'm not entirely convinced that we even see it fully in the next bull market. There's because like Solana right now is so buggy. During the last year and a half, they've had like a total of like over a month in downtime. You know what I mean? So it's still super
Yeah.
buggy. It's not ready for mass adoption. We don't know what's going to happen with it. Not to say that I don't think they're going to be there. I absolutely do. I think there's going to be massive plays on those. And actually, by that point in time, like I mean, there's technology being developed right now to bridge these chains to where you can just move your NFTs cross chain everywhere, right? So at that point in time, you might be able to move your Bored Apes to Solana. You know what I mean? So I don't know enough information yet to be able to make those plays. I'm still going to be flipping them, obviously. Like I'm gonna get on whitelist in Solana. I'm definitely gonna be flipping them. But as far as long term holds, I don't see anything in Solana or or Polygon or Avalanche right now that I feel I have to hold. And some people will argue that, well, what about the historical Solana or the historical Cardano or these places? I don't think they're historical anymore. I think that NFTs came on Ethereum. It came on Ethereum. Those are the historical NFTs. It's been done. It doesn't matter that it's on a different chain. I don't think that you're going to have these massively evaluated historical plays on other chains because it's been done. We've been there, we've done that. We got a T-shirt for it, and that's it. So
the only
that's
thing I would the only thing I would say is, and I don't call this stuff out, like even the Bored Apes stuff like that. It's hard because majority of there's maybe 5% of people like that are probably part of alpha groups and stuff that have the capital to throw at shit like that. And I definitely wouldn't recommend holding something like that. Like that's why I said, like, if you've got, if you got the go to passes and stuff like pre-mint wins, or you've got, something that quickly spikes, like even the Neo Tokyos where you make 40 ETH on it, sell that shit and move on and come back in it if it goes back down. But I don't recommend locking up massive amounts of capital in an NFT play. I just don't do it. I would do it in chains, infrastructure chains, but not in that. But if you were looking to do that, DeGods would be the only one on the Solana chain I would do, because they are like the Bored Ape Yacht Clubs. And Kenny threw out a great play with OK Bears where, it was like, it was a DGen play, but it was once they hit Ethereum, there was a pissing contest between both chains, and that happens. And people are looking at and saying, oh, DeGods are rivals to Bored Ape. I mean, it's just the fact about it, because they are the OGs on that chain. That blew up into blue chips. That would be the only one I'd look at. But even for me, I don't pile, 5, 6, 7, 20 grand into an NFT and hold it long term, especially in a bear market. Wouldn't recommend it.
For
Definitely. Sure. Can I get one question in before we wrap up?
Yep. Sure thing.
I thought it'd be good for new people. What would be, if you could say it, in one or two sentences, what would have you changed in your first bear market, like experiencing your first bear market? How would have you dealt with it differently? If you could go back, so to speak.
I think it depends on whether you come into crypto in a bull or a bear market. Like if you come in during the bear market, it's a little bit different. So I'll just give you a 2-sentence answer for each one. So I came in a bull market. So what I originally wish I would have done is I came in at the latter half. So I really didn't even have time to make a whole lot of money in that market. I wish that I would have spent a longer time studying before I jumped into the market. I wish I would have spent, hundreds of hours studying before I even went into the market. If I would have done that, then I wouldn't have gotten in until the bull market, and I would have had some conviction and got in a lot better plays. So I think for anybody, the number one thing, or really rather whether you get in a bull or a bear market, is before you do your first buy, you need to put in probably 200 to 300 hours of study into the market. That means reading, that means looking into projects, going to websites, reading white papers, getting involved in communities and being involved with them every day. If you do that, you will save yourself so much nonsense. So that's the number one. And the number two would be when you are ready to jump into some plays, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Start doing that. DCA into those, and then learn as you're DCAing. And then you can start choosing small percentages of your portfolio to put into other projects, and maybe do some free whitelists and NFTs, do some real cheap whitelists, try your hand at some flipping, ease yourself into it. But get into Bitcoin, get into Ethereum, and do it that way. Slow and steady wins the race. Don't worry about these people that supposedly are making tens of millions of dollars in 2 weeks here. It doesn't happen. Half of it's lies anyway, right? It's few and far between, 1 in a million. Go do a lottery scratch off ticket if that's what you want to do. But that's the right way to do it. Education, go into the verified plays that we know are going to be around, and then slowly ease yourself into different ecosystems, different plays in small amounts until you become comfortable. And then you'll find your niche, right? You'll find your niche. Eventually, you may just go into NFTs, or maybe you just go into DeFi plays or whatever. But you need to start that way so that you understand how the entire ecosystem works.
Kenny, that's why you and I get along so well. We think almost exactly. That was my answer for the most part. I'll touch on a few other points to that. So, a few things that help, I think, like I said, like alpha groups are super important, because if you're looking to put any sort of money into like a business, or you're looking to do massive amount of taxes, what do? You find a professional that knows what the fuck they're talking about. And when you get into alpha groups, don't just join an alpha group because it's called an alpha group. Like, join in, look at what the experience is, look at what they have to offer. And, I'm not advocating that we are the go-to one-stop shop. That's what we aim for. But like, we are focused on educating people. And like, I'm a straight up person. Like, I'm not going to tell you like, hey, get into this because you're going to 20 extra money. Like, there are those plays, but they're risky. Like, I'm going to tell you, if you're new to the space, enter Bitcoin, enter Ethereum. Don't, go for those moonshots, because that's where you get burned and that's where you leave the space. What helped me, and I will tell this for everybody, and I've actually told this to our artist that's working on our collection because he is not a Web3 guy. The conviction that you can learn from learning this stuff, like anybody that's new to this space and wants to truly learn, I highly recommend you listen to The Internet of Money. It's an audiobook by Andreas Antonopoulos, who's a Bitcoin OG. It's probably a little outdated because he wrote it like 5 years ago, but I DM me and I will get you a free audiobook copy of it, because it is very good on teaching you the fundamentals of what, not how Bitcoin operates necessarily, it does, but why, like the adaptation of money from, people that traded rice and beans and spices to how we got to digital payments and now going to Web3. And if you see the process, if you see it through to the end on like where the future is headed and why it's there, like no bear market will scare you if you truly buy in and understand what you're investing in. It's easy to turn around and say, I'm going to throw money at Tesla. But if you don't understand Tesla's, balance sheet, if you don't understand what they're doing as a company and where the money's flowing and their vision for the long term, you can't make an educated decision on if they're going to last. And that's how you find those diamond-handed projects that are here. Read the white papers. I can't tell you how many times people invest in a project and just go off of what they're hearing or what they see on a website or whatever. Read the details, read the fine print of shit, because that is where your bread and butter is. And when you have the conviction to turn around and say, I understand where this space is going and it could dip 90%, but I know that this thing is going to get adopted for the real world companies. Like, I promise you, you won't leave this space, because that's what a lot of people do. They come in hearing I'm going to 20x my money, shit gets rocky, and they turn around and leave. And those people that understood what Bitcoin was trying to do, like, those are the OGs, and those are the people who are filthy rich now because they didn't leave the space. They weren't scared. That's the best thing you can do.
Yep. Conviction, man. Conviction. You have
100%.
to be convicted to do these long terms. So, all right, guys, we did go a little bit over today. I think we did about 15 minutes over, but good information. I hope everybody, takes this and applies it, right? So, like, we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but that's why we have a group, right? So what answers I don't have, Nate might have, or he doesn't have, Link might have, and we have a whole other group of people inside the Alpha Mutants Discord that are there to help you, and we're going to continue to bring on people as we go. And as a community, we can be smarter than the market, right? So as a community, not one person ever can beat the market, but as a community together, you could do, have a much better chance to do the right things. So again, guys, if you haven't watched our previous episodes, we've got quite a few that are really interesting. There'll be some links up here that you can check out some of those. Links under the video in the description down here for our social media, for our Discord. Come into the Discord, ping us. We'll talk to you personally. We'll jump on the VCs with you. Well, any questions you have, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. Again, and Nate, appreciate you taking the time, in the middle of your workday here to be with us. Link, appreciate you taking the time here today. I think it's No, it's not too bad for you today. What is it, about midnight now there? So thank you for taking the
Yeah, it's about 12:30 now.
yeah
That's fine.
a late day with us to be on also. And guys, so again, appreciate it. We'll be back next week with Web3 Weekly. So see you later, guys.
Yeah. Hopefully the next time you guys see me, it's not because the whole system is imploding again.
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about some good stuff next time.
Yeah.
All right, guys.